Now, the next thing that we're going to be adding is the beams and girders. So just to kind of make the distinction between the two, a girder is something that receives load from other structural members in that horizontal plane. And in this case, we'll have some joists that frame into a wide flange member. So they're sort of acting as girders in that sense. The first thing that we're going to need to do, similar to how we did with the columns, is to bring in the size of wide flange member that we need to place. And we're actually going to have two sizes for these members. So I'm going to go back to Insert and load Autodesk Family. So I'm going to type in steel and scroll down to the bottom here. Let's see. All right, we're getting closer. You might be able to search for wide flange also. It maybe be a more productive way of finding this component. Oh, there it is. Wide flange here, load. All right, now I'm going to need two different beam sizes. One of them is going to be a W16 by 40, and the other one will be a W14 by 34. So let's search through here, W13 by, oops, all right, there it is. And say okay. And I'm also, while I'm here, I'm just going to go and bring in, so I'll scroll all the way to the bottom again. Okay, WT, wide flange, load. And the next one we're going to find is the W16 by 40. There it is. Say okay. All right, now those two should be brought into the file. All right, I'm going to go to level 2 now. Right, and you can see the columns are appearing. Now again, if you want to see things in with their true widths, you can go down to the detail level and change it to 5. Okay, so when we start to place these beams, you should be able to see them. All right, so let's take a look at that image that I showed you, the 3D image. So let's go to the pause and take you to see that three-dimensional image. Okay, so as I mentioned, we'll be using these joists, and they are going to be resting on some of these wide flange members. The ones that will receive the joists will be the deeper one. So remember that first number, the W16, is deeper than the W14. So we'll use the W16s where the joists are bearing on them, and then we'll run the W14s along the same when they're parallel to those joists. Now, I also want to refer to this detail here because it will help to explain why the height of the beams is going to be lower than the level of the floor. So what's going to happen is these beams are going to receive the joists, they'll sit on top of them, and then on top of that is a metal deck with concrete slab. So the top of the beams that are running in the north-south direction are going to be 6.5 inches below the level. So I'm going to go ahead and start to place those beams. If you go to structure to beam here, And then you go to the pull down, you should see the 16 by 40s. Okay, now those are the ones that are going to be supporting the joists. All right, now I'm going to start inserting the beams. I'll begin with the one that's at column line 5 here in the lower left-hand corner. If you go to structure, beam, wide flange, if it doesn't appear at the top of the list, you click on that and you should see it further down here. And I'll zoom in a little closer now. And I'm going to snap to the face of that column, and I'm going to come in here to the face of that column there. Okay. Now, I should see it appear. There it is. Okay. Let's make sure. All right, and you'll see that it's got a gap, and that's not a problem. Okay. Right now it's grayed out, and I'm unable to select it. So what I'm going to do is, I'm still on level 2. I'm going to adjust the view range. For the time being, I'm going to make it unlimited, and we may come back and change that back. Right, apply, and okay. So now everything below will appear, and I can select it. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to be having the joist sit on top of it, and we'll also have a metal deck and concrete slab. So after I select it, I'm going to adjust the height here relative to level 2 for the end, the start and the end of it. And 0.5. Now, before I go and make copies of that, I'm going to take a look at it in section. I want to make sure it's where I think it should be. All right, so there it is. Okay, and again, if you're not seeing it with thickness, go and adjust the detail level to fine. All right, so that's where that one should be located. So I'll go back to level 2, and I'll start making some copies of that beam. So click on it, copy, and I'll just use a reference point of the end point here, 1, 2, 3. And I'll also make copies of it. "25 feet up." I'll just input this 25 feet, enter, and then I'll come over 25 feet. Let's take a look at it in 3D again, just to double check and make sure everything is where it's supposed to be. You can see these beams are now spanning in a north-south direction. Now what I need to do is add the ones that are going in the east-west. So they'll be just along the outer 2 column lines. They're a smaller beam, and they're also going to have a different height. They're only going to be -4 inches from the level 2. So let's go back to level 2. I'm going to add the beam. These ones will be smaller because they're not taking as much load. And I'm going to place them now. When I click on them, I should be able to pull them closer to the center, to where they would attach in there. So I'm just using those arrow keys. I'll do the same here. I'm going to drag this in. Try again. There it goes. Okay, again, the height of that's going to be different. We want the tops of these to be the same height as the joists. So I'm going to drop those down to -4 inches for the start and And here. And let's take a look at that in the south view. There it is. It's the one running in that direction. Now I can go back up to level 2 and make copies of it. Copy 25 feet. And I'll copy this one 50 feet. And go this direction 25. So we should have all of them at level 2. Let's go to the 3D view. There they are. This would be a good time to save your file before we continue. All right, now that I have the beams drawn in on level 2, I'm going to need to make a copy of them and place them on level 3. Now you could go through the same process, go to level 3 and insert them the same way that I did for level 2. But a faster way to do this would be to select all of them. So I'm going to click on one, hold down the control key and go around and pick all of them. And copy them to the clipboard. So I'm going to hit Control C. This may be Command C if you're using a Mac, I'm not sure. Control C. And up here on the ribbon under Paste, you'll see that there's an option to say Align to Selected Levels. So I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to click on level 3 and say OK. As you can see, it's made a copy of these. Now, I will need to make one change because the relationship of the top of the column to the top of these beams is a little bit different on this level because of the detail of the floor slab that's going to be on level 2 and the roof material that'll be on level 3. But this process shouldn't take too long. What I'm going to do is click on one of these beams, and you can see here, and this is because I'm copying it from level 2, the start offset, level offset is -6.5, and the end level offset is -6.5. I'm going to go through the same process of holding down the Control key and clicking on the beams, but I only want to select the ones that are running in the north-south direction. Okay. Those all have a start level of -6.5. I'm going to change this to 4 and as well, so to 4 and apply. Okay, so you may have seen that they moved up ever so slightly. And for the ones that are running in east-west direction, so this should just be 4 of them. I'm going to hold down Control, select them all at the same time. I'm going to change those so they're at -1.5. And this is so they'll have the same top level as the joists that we're going to be adding next. Now I'm going to go down to my section and take a look. So as you can see, and if I was to measure these from here to this top of the level 3 is 1.5, and from the top of the steel beam to that level should be 4. Okay, and this is the column beyond. So as you can see, that that beam is going to frame into that column. Okay, go back to our 3D view. The next thing we'll be adding is the the joists, and they are going to run in the east-west direction. So they'll go from here to here, basically all the way across here, and they'll bear on these wide flange members. These are acting as girders. So what we need to do is to go to the Insert tab, and again, click on Load Autodesk Family. And in this search bar here, I'm going to input K-Series. So this is the type of joist that we're going to be bringing in. We're going to use the K-Series bar joist rod web. Okay, and I'm going to click on Load. All right. Oh, similar to what happened when I brought in the columns and the beams, I'm going to get some options here. I'm looking for one called 14K4. Now that 14 is the number or the depth of the joist. And how you determine this is, at least from the standpoint of preliminary design, by going through the span calculations and, forming a rough idea of what that depth needs to be. We're going to use the one here. It's 14K4. And just so you know, so you can see here the depth, 1 foot 2 inches. And the difference between all of these is just basically the weight per lineal foot. So we'll have to do with the various members that are part of the assembly of this component. I'm going to click on OK. All right, now that joist should be brought into the file. I'm going to now go to level 2. Now, if you recall, we placed the top of the girders at -6.5. And for the members that are running east-west, we put them at -4. We're going to do the same thing with these K-series joists, the top of the member. And, just make note that the placement of these always has to do with the top of these members, not the bottom. In part because that has some bearing on what's going to happen above it. So I'm going to bring in the K-series joist, and I'm going to set their start and end points at -4. So when you go to structure and beam, you should see the K-series bar joist that you brought in, right? We're going to start by locating one of them, and we won't even, worry about where it is specifically for the time being. I'm going to start clicking somewhere along the left side there of the structure, and I'm going to bring it to the center, the column line at the middle of the structure. Now I'm also going to click on that K-series joist. If you'll notice here, the start and end levels are at 0. I'm going to change these to -4, -4. Okay. And I'm also going to get more specific about its placement in the north-south direction. Okay. It's I just sort of snapped arbitrarily, but I want to make this a specific dimension, 5 feet. Okay. So there's one of them, and let's make a copy and have a look at this in the section, 5 feet. So this is where my section line is. So if you want to check this out, you just need to keep copying these until one of them is on the upper side of this section, because I want to see what the relationship is, where it's hitting the tops of the beams. So I'm going to go back down to section drawing. And here we go. So what I want is for these K-series joists to sit on top of the wide flange that's running north-south. Okay, so that looks good. And there should be 4 inches from the top of this to level 2. So now I'm going to go back to level 2, and I'll continue to add more of these. So I'm going to copy 5 feet. You can just, you could do this in a faster way, but there's not too many of these. So here we go, 5 feet. I'll just keep running along 5 feet. Okay, now we don't need one along here because we have those wide flange beams. Okay, and then I'm going to copy all of these. So I have another one on the left side, on the right side. So I can select all of them by holding down Control and copy them over 25 feet. Let's take a look. Oh, we missed one of them. Copy that one. Let's take a look in 3D. See what we have. View. And there they are, sitting on top of those beams, and at that center girder, rather, they're meeting on, at the center of the column line. Okay. So the same way that we copied these members up from level 2, we can do the same thing with the K-series joists. Control, 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 all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way around. Control C, and come up here to paste, align to selected levels, and we'll move these to level. We'll make a copy, a set of them on level 3. Right, and let's take a look at the section. All right, now see how they're sitting below the top of the beam? I need to raise them up. So I still have them selected. So I'm going to go ahead and raise them up to minus 1.5, minus 1.5, apply. And there you can see now they have the correct relationship. And I'll just zoom over. This is the center one. See how they join in the middle there? Okay. So let's go back to our 3D view. And that will conclude the steel framework that we're going to do in this session. Be sure to save your project.